Hello, welcome to another episode of Varsity360. I'm Columbian sports editor Micah Rice, joined once again by Will Denner, and we're here to talk some girls basketball in Southwest Washington. Last week, we talked about 5 pressing questions about the boys basketball season as it hits its stride. Today, we're here to talk about the girls, and that goes everywhere from today's rematch between Camas and Union, which I'm sure is going to have a lot of attention, all the way down to the 3As, 2As, and 1As. But as always, we're coming to you from the First Pacific Financial Studio here in downtown Vancouver. Thank you to them for supporting the show. But Will, let's get right to it. Union, Camas. You saw round 1 between the Papermakers and the Titans. Early candidate for Game of the Year. Our first question: how much has Union closed the gap with Camas, being that they took them down to the wire earlier this season?
Yeah, I think they're definitely getting closer, although Camas was able to pull out, I think it was a 71-69 win for their 9th straight win in the series. I think we kind of saw an improved Union team and kind of a new look Camas team, both things kind of coinciding with each other this season. Union, I think, seems to be a little bit more of a balanced team this year with the addition of Jaleese and Janessa Chapman, alongside obviously Brooklyn Haywood, who's continuing to take the next step and reach another level in her game. And I was also really impressed by a sophomore named Mila Larry. That both teams are kind of undersized. She kind of has to play almost a 4 or 5 in some situations, but a good shooter, can put it on the floor and can really guard all positions. I mean, she was playing the post, but on defense, she was in many cases guarding Kira Thompson, Camas's point guard. So pretty impressive there. And I think I said it right before the first time they played that I think Union has a legitimate chance to win this game, and I still feel that way going into this latest matchup, and it's at Union, so maybe that gives the Titans a bit of an edge at home. But I think we're kind of seeing now this Union team kind of figure out its identity a little bit more. And, obviously, as we've talked about, it's not quite the same Camas team as it was last year. They graduated a lot of people, so they're kind of still trying to figure out who they are as well. But, it's definitely getting closer. We saw Union, even though they faced a big deficit in that game, come back and almost win it. So, it's definitely getting closer.
Well, we'll talk more about Brooklyn Haywood and Kira Thompson in the next question, just a little teaser there. Right. But to talk about the teams in general, just recapping the first game, Camas took charge early. They led 34-22 at halftime, held Haywood to just 2 points in the first half, but then the Titans came storming back. So you were there, you got kind of the tenor of the atmosphere, which I understand was electric in there. But I remember looking and be like, okay, that first half, it's like, okay, more of the same, even though it's kind of a different team. But the fact that Union won that second half so overwhelmingly to, even though they ended up losing just by 2 points, I think that sort of shows, to me, that tells me more about Union than it does about Camas.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think last year, there were times when maybe they were a little bit too reliant on their shooting. And obviously, it's kind of a old saying of live by the 3 and die by the 3. And I think sometimes in a road environment in particular, that was kind of a tough thing for Union. But it was really a credit to them to be able to storm back in that game. And obviously the Chapman sisters have a natural chemistry just playing together for so many years, and background. They transferred from Ridgefield this season, I think it's just a team that looks makes a little bit more sense on paper, and they've fared pretty well in their non-league games so far as well. Obviously they fell just a little bit short of the state tournament in each of the last 2 years, but I think it's got to be Tacoma Dome or bust for them this year, and I think they have the team to do it for sure.
Well, and with Camas especially, that's the whole saying that you alluded to earlier, that they lost 4 out of 5 starters from the team that won the state championship last year. How quickly would they be able to sort of find their identity? And I think that continues to be a work in progress. I mean, there's been instances this season when, like the first half against Union, where it's like, okay, this is what we're used to seeing from them. Then, On Monday of this week, they go up to Tacoma and face a really good North Thurston team, and kind of fell behind early and ended up trying to shoot their way out of it from 3-point range. Ended up only, I think, going 7 for 34 from the from beyond the arc, which is something we're not used to seeing typically in the past few seasons from Camas. But I think it shows that this is a team that's still trying to work out a few kinks, and I would venture to say you're probably not going to see that type of single game performance again from the Papermakers this year.
And in that first game against Union, of course they come out firing from three. I think Bailey Farah hit like 3 or 4 3-pointers in the opening quarter and kind of set the tone that way. And it's just and like I said, both teams kind of a little bit undersized this year. Obviously last year when you have players like Addie Harris and Reagan Jamison, and then it's definitely a new look team. And but they, alongside Thompson, they still have Sophie Buzzard, who was primarily a starter for them last year as well. But definitely, like you said, kind of still figuring out who they are. And the 3-pointer I think is a little bit more crucial for them this year, but to be fair, they're still a very good shooting team. So,
well, one common thing that Union and Camas both have is a legitimate star player that is kind of calling the shots for them. You have Brooklyn Haywood, the junior at Union, who since she set foot on the hardwood as a freshman has just shown an amazing scoring ability, received a ton of Division I offers over the offseason, and is leading the area in scoring with over 33 points per game this year. And then on the other side in Camas, you have Kira Thompson, another Division I level recruit who is the quintessential point guard. She can, fill up the assist category any day of the year, but has also shown a little bit of scoring knack. She went back-to-back 40 points and 33 points last week. So the number 2 question we have, is it a 2-player race for player of the year right now between Brooklyn Haywood and Kira Thompson?
I'm going to kind of give a non-committal answer on this. I think they're definitely the front runners, and for good reason. Brooklyn Haywood may go down as the most prolific girls basketball scorer in Clark County history when it's all said and done. Like I said earlier, it just continues to expand and kind of refine an already a really good game. And it seems like again, referencing that Camas game, she was a kind of key part in leading their surge back, and somebody I think who she hits a 3-pointer or 2 from deep. It's just that energy that the team kind of feeds on, and is a really key part of the team's success as well. And then Kira, it's funny. Just when you look at the past years of, she didn't really always need to be a scorer. She could just kind of, be a shooter, kind of, pick her spots here and there, in addition to being a very strong passer. But she's really kind of embraced and fulfilled that role of their go-to scorer now. She, I think it was actually that same game that she hit 1,000 career points, becoming just the second player in program history to do so, following Addie Harris as well. So I think it is definitely those two in front. I would say we should definitely still consider Kennedy Bockert at Woodland, Gracie Glavin at Columbia River, 2 teams that we'll talk about later as well, depending on how far they go. I think it's definitely those 2 at the front. But as we kind of look at this award, it's very much kind of predicated on team success too. So that'll obviously play into it. But when you just look at 2 individual dynamic players, Haywood and Thompson are definitely at the top of that list.
Well, I think one thing that's both Brooklyn Haywood and Kira Thompson share is that they've turned themselves into more complete basketball players this year. I think with Brooklyn, the thing was always, we kind of always known she could shoot. We kind of always known she could score, but how did that translate into her team winning? And the previous 2 years, Union fell just short of making it to the state playoffs. So this year, I think the challenge for Brooklyn was, you can score, but what are you going to do to make the whole team around you better. And I think you've seen that so far, that part of her game really developing with the way of like the Chapman sisters becoming those sort of complementary players. And again, you go back to the second half against Camas, and you go back to Union's earlier game against Davis, one of the top ranked teams in the state. And I think when Union plays that style of ball, and when Haywood is not only scoring but making those players around her better, I think that makes them the most dangerous version of themselves.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I think it's, again, just a team that fits a little better on paper, and not everybody needs to be a shooter necessarily. There's it's five people that really make sense on the floor together, and it's clearly translating into winning basketball so far.
Well, and then Kira, we talked about her scoring ability. In the past, she could score, but was primarily the orchestrator, the facilitator, the conductor of that offense that they play. But whether it's 40 points against Evergreen or 33 points against Union, showing that she can score as well as facilitate, I think shows the growth of a more complete player.
Yeah, and she's still very much a floor general as well, obviously, and the kind of the engine behind that team. But yeah, the scoring so far has been really impressive to watch, and it'll be a key part of where Camas goes this season.
All right, moving on to question number 3. Another team that's been impressive to watch has been Mountain View. What's behind Mountain View's Class 3A Greater St. Helens League success this season? They are undefeated in league play. Why have the Thunder been so effective?
Yeah, admittedly, I haven't actually seen them in person yet, so just kind of going off of box scores and just kind of what we've seen and heard about them in passing so far. But first of all, they added a great player from Italy this year in Sveva Bernasconi. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Meg Wachnick did a great feature story on her, and just kind of how her path led her to Vancouver and playing here at Mountain View for a year as an exchange student. And she's been awesome so far. I think she just had a 33-point game against Prairie. And then there's Layla and Jadelyn Senderson, two players who were actually coincidentally in Union's program to start their high school careers, but they transferred to Mountain View last year ahead of their junior years, I believe, and now are seniors, and kind of continuing, positive momentum for this team that last year won a share of the league title with Evergreen, which is definitely a big deal for that program. And even with, graduating a player like Nina Peterson last year, who was part of our all-region team, the Thunder are in really good shape. And they also have a new first-year head coach this year in Chuck Knight, who's a former head coach at Camas and Canby in Oregon as well. So moving pieces there, but the Thunder have continued on an upward trajectory this year.
Back to Bernasconi, I think it's every coach's dream to show up in the gym at the star practices and have, here's a new face who just happened to have played in the FIBA Under-17 World Cup with her country's national team. I think you'd take that any year. And certainly Bernasconi, I talked with Meg more about what she learned about her and when she did the story that she wrote. And she's really a complete player, someone with great ball handling skills, maybe 6 feet, if not a shade under, but can post up, be effective near the basket, but also beat defenders off the dribble and shoot, of course. But I think with the Thunder, it really comes down to balance as well, because not like the Senderson sisters you talk about, you also have players that can show up and have big games. I think Kamaria Brown had a 20-point game earlier this year. And so when you have 4 players that are scoring options, if not more, on the court any given time, that makes you a dangerous team.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a good balanced team, like you said. And, I think we should definitely mention the other teams in the league who are in running right now. I mean, I think the 3A GSHL is always going to be tough. I mean, I think Evergreen will still be in the mix, and Kelso had a good win early in the season against Prairie, and maybe Prairie can even make a push as well. So still a lot to be played, but Mountain View has definitely established themselves as the front runner so far in this league.
Very much looking forward to Mountain View versus Evergreen whenever they clash, just because Evergreen, anytime you have Adrian Wright and Kimora Ross on a team, you're going to have a team that can score, and so that makes the Plainsmen dangerous.
Yeah, and even though Mountain View won that first game, I think they're going to be playing the next one at the field house at Evergreen, so that should be an interesting one, and very much could end up as the decisive win for a league title for either team. So yeah.
On to number 4, and Will, I think you were on a pretty good roll last week with choosing the games you got to see, because not long after watching Camas and Union go down to the wire, you saw another instant classic up at Woodland where Columbia River edged the Beavers 42-41. It was a game that we knew was probably going to be good because, along with maybe Mark Morris, it pretty much is Woodland and Columbia River that have separated themselves from the rest of the 2A Greater St. Helens League. You wrote a story that was in today's paper just talking about the depth that River has, and obviously that state tournament experience that they got last year and going to Yakima and kind of soaking that all in and then bringing most of those players back has been hugely beneficial for the Rapids. But my question is, how high should Columbia River and Woodland set their sights, being that they're going to go down to the wire probably in the chase for the league title. But then Columbia River, obviously, they have their sights set on a return to Yakima. And behind, the talent of players like Kennedy Bockert and others on that Woodland team, I would have to think the Beavers are also saying that we should be part of that mix as well.
Absolutely, yeah. I think both teams should definitely set their sights on Yakima and even possibly placing, depending on how everything shakes out. I mean, the 2A GSHL at the top has been, historically in the last few years, we've seen pretty good competitively on a statewide level. When you had last year, like you said, River reached Yakima, Ridgefield was there as well in the round of 12. In 2023, Washougal and Hudson's Bay were there, and then obviously not too long ago, Washougal obviously won a state title. But I think first with River, just going back to that game, it was interesting seeing a team that has been able to put up big scoring numbers, kind of win. I think I described it at one point, tweeting about that game, as it kind of turned into a rock fight. It was a 42-41 win, and neither team was shooting all that well. There were a lot of fouls called. River obviously had a huge task by trying to defend Bockert, a 6-foot post who's a matchup nightmare for any team. But River, they were able to weather both Gracie Glavin and Marley Myers fouling out of that game, and really it kind of showed that depth and versatility, putting players like Kaya Murtich and Avi Desjarlais on Bockert to kind of defend her, and with River returning such a good senior class, and then adding both Avi Desjarlais and Olivia Carroll, transfers from Hudson's Bay, and then Michaela King coming in as a freshman and already making an impact. They have great depth, and T. Anderson said, it kind of to reference something that I wrote today in that notebook, she thinks that she could start on any given day as many as 9 of their players, which is just impressive. On Woodland side, I think we could easily be talking about this a little differently if they make a few free throws down the stretch of that game. They were very close to winning that game, and obviously it starts with Bockert, who's I think the leading scorer in the 2A GSHL and a double-double machine. But they have some interesting pieces all around the board. Lainey Hayden and Addie Statting are a couple seniors who provide leadership and good shooters and gritty defenders as well. And they're looking like a really interesting team, to stack up with for any team. And I think they might even have a little bit more points scored so far than River. So a team that can score and defend with the best, and definitely a competitive team this year under longtime coach Glenn Flanagan.
Well, this is the time of the season where I think you see the good teams start to shift gears and gear up for not only that league title chase, but then make sure they have all the kinks out by the time you get to the postseason. So for River and Woodland, I think that transition starts about now. On to our 5th question. We'll go the 1A Trico, and Seton Catholic, undefeated in league play, much like the boys team, used a really tough non-league schedule to kind of prepare themselves for the Trico League, but also some goals they might have beyond that. Seton has made the opening round of the state tournament for the last 2 years, but failed to advance beyond that. Question, is this the year Seton Catholic clears that opening round hurdle in the state tournament?
I think so. I think they definitely believe that, and they have good reason to. I think it comes down to a couple things. First is just the fact that, like you said, they've been there each of the last 2 years, and their junior class in particular, they're kind of veterans now. It started their freshman year when they made program history and won the Trico League. They made that state opening round game, and I don't want to to say they were just satisfied to get there, but I think when you get to that stage for the first time, it's like you're still kind of figuring out how that works. And last year, I feel like they were so close to getting to Yakima. They played a good Eatonville team in the state opening round game and a kind of a de facto home game for them at Battleground. They came up just short in that game, and I think this year they're really motivated by that and just trying to take that next step as a program. And one of the ways to do that, like you alluded to, is scheduling a tougher non-league slate. They really kind of made a point of that. Phil Kent, the school's athletic director, and taking over this year as the head girls basketball coach as well. He was telling me about last year in Yakima when he was watching the boys game. He kind of snuck over to the girls court and watched a lot of that tournament and just kind of felt like, we really need to play some more speed, some more physicality, and just kind of some more top tier teams in that non-league slate. And I think as of right now, no offense to any other Trico League teams, but they don't really get that same level of competition. I think they played a good Kingsway Christian team last week, got pushed pretty well by them, but Seton hasn't lost a game in this league since 2023. So I think this is a good opportunity for them to get some tougher competition out of league. And even if it means, going 0-6, 0-7, they feel like it's worthwhile to do that.
Yeah, I think that is going to be interesting because you could make the argument that you've gone out and you've played a really tough non-league schedule, losing those games, but right. Those are the types of opponents you need to be able to beat when you get to places like the state opening round and making it eventually, if you're able to make it to the final 12 in Yakima. So I'm going to be curious to see how Seton takes the lessons they learned from their non-league slate, puts them into practice, lets them germinate during the league season so that they can bear the fruit coming into the postseason when it really matters.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I don't know too many 1A schools who are scheduling, a game like Camas against the defending 4A champs, but props to them, like I said, for being willing to do that, even if it means, having a loss. So yeah, we'll see what happens.
All right. Well, we have set the stage for both the girls and the boys seasons as they hit their, the best part of the year as we head into the meat of the league schedule and begin the stretch run where league champions and postseason berths are decided. It's round 2 of 3 tonight between Camas and Union girls. Be sure to get out to Union if you want to see some good high school basketball. Be sure to follow us on 360 Preps, and we will see you out on the hardwood.